Hey everyone, Miss Singali again. So after you've read the audio for chapter 4, you can go ahead and reflect on the purpose for reading this chapter. On the bottom of this page in your packet, there's some space where you can write your ideas for how Kenny is showing empathy for others in this chapter. And then if you go to the next part of your packet, there are some comprehension activities for you. And for this activity, you will read about a challenge that Kenny is facing and then explain how Kenny responds to the challenge and how he feels about it. So this is a skill that we practiced also in a previous screencast. To practice empathy, you will also think about how another character feels about the same challenge. So we're kind of combining some skills together. Miss Weston put some definitions here for us. So if you're wondering what is a challenge, a response, or a feeling, there are some kind of ideas and guiding questions for you. A challenge is the problem or the difficult situation that a character is facing. Their response means what the character's doing about that problem or about their challenge. So when you're writing down your response, you need to think about what action did they take? How did they respond to the challenge? And then the feeling is how the character feels about the situation. I think this one's really relatable. So you can think about the zones of regulation, and maybe if you were that character, what color, what zone would you be in? And the first one is done for you here. So the challenge, the first situation is that Mama is forcing Joey and Kenny to wear those several layers of clothing to school each day. They put the multiple pairs of pants and jackets on, and they're the only kids dressed like this. So you have to think about Kenny's response and feeling in the second part of this chart here. Kenny responds by complaining to Byron about the situation. And also, Kenny feels annoyed and frustrated because he has to help Joey every single day. So he would probably be between the yellow zone and the red zone. So not only did we think about Kenny's response and his feelings there, but we can try to understand where he's coming from in his perspective by relating to his feelings. And that's part of empathy too. And to practice empathy even further, there's a second question here for this challenge. How does Mama feel about keeping her kids warm? So can we develop empathy for Mama by thinking about this question? Well, Mama is from the South where it's always warm, and she feels really protective of her kids and wants to keep them safe. So maybe she's feeling like she's in the yellow zone. She's a little anxious. She wants to make sure they're okay. And so that's why she makes them wear those layers to school every day. So we want you to practice with this situation. Rufus doesn't have his own pair of gloves to protect him from the cold. So make sure you're recording how Kenny responds and feels. Part of how Kenny responds is already there for you. You might add on or think of other ideas, but you can think about how he feels and record your idea there. And then how do you think Rufus feels about not having his own gloves? So see if you can develop some empathy or practice having empathy for Rufus by considering how he's feeling. And then the next page, there are two more situations just like that. So I'm going to read through these for you as well. The third challenge is that Larry Dunn steals Kenny's gloves. On this one, you need to write Kenny's response and how he feels. And then how do you think Byron feels about his younger brother being bullied? So there's a sentence frame that's starting that one off for you. Byron is probably feeling, and then you can even make an inference on that one. Use what you know from your life experiences and what's in the text to help you answer that one. And the fourth challenge, the final one in this chart, is that Byron beats up Larry Dunn in front of everyone to get him back for stealing the gloves. So you can record Kenny's response and feelings, and then also consider how is Larry Dunn feeling right now. I also wanted to include some information that can help you when you're answering the stuff in this chart here, the questions in this chart, because on some of them, you might use an inference. You might even find some words in the text that help explain your thinking. There might be some words or a quote from the author that you want to include. So I put some information in this slideshow on using quotes, and you can practice using quotes while you're writing your responses there in your packet, or even if you're just doing some writing at home. When you're going into 6th grade, you're going to use quotes a lot in your writing, and if you're a 6th grader going into junior high school next year, if you're one of the kids in my class right now, then you already know you're going to be using quotes in your writing. So this is good practice and a good review for you. What I tell my students is that they need to use a quote sandwich. So that means there are 3 pieces to this sandwich in order to use a quote in your writing or to explain your thinking, like in this chart. So the first step is to introduce the quote, the second step is to put the quote, and then the third step is to explain the quote. Here's a quote that I love by Michael Jordan. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So if I were to use this quote in a piece of my writing, I want to use this part, the last 2 lines. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. First, let's just look at where the punctuation would go. I highlighted in yellow where the quotation marks go. They go around the words that somebody else said. They're not your words, they're their words, so you put them in quotation marks. You can see after the quote is over, I put a space for the page number or paragraph number where it came from. And then the period doesn't go inside the quotes, it goes after that little citation. So you can use this as kind of a guide to help you if you're using some textual evidence in your writing. I know punctuation is really important when we're using responses like this. So it's here for you to use as a resource if you want it. And then let's look at how I introduced the quote, because that was step 1 of our quote sandwich. So here in yellow, you can see where I introduced it. I just picked a sentence frame. The author says, Michael Jordan said. So in yellow, that's where I introduced the quote. And then in green, this is step 2, use the quote. So those are Michael Jordan's words. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. I put what page it came from, and the period goes at the end of that green sentence. And then the third step is to explain the quote. So this means that despite failure, Michael Jordan refused to give up, and he continued working on his goals until he achieved them. I have a whole screencast. It's like 15, 20 minutes long on using this quote sandwich and using quotes and citations in your writing. So Ms. Weston's class, if any of your students want that, please reach out to me and I will send that link to you guys so you have it too, just as an extra tool. But I also have some sentence frames here that you guys can use in your writing, or even you can practice using them in this chart when you're explaining how they're feeling. If you find any textual evidence that supports what you're trying to say. So you can use according to the text, the author stated, in the second paragraph or on page blah, 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 the text stated. There are a whole bunch here. Let me know if you have any questions about this. But then for your packet, the final piece for you for chapter 4 is this exit ticket at the bottom. If you choose not to use any of that quote stuff on this activity today, that's totally okay. But if you're looking for a little challenge or you want to start practicing some skills that you're going to be using in 6th grade, it's a good idea to start practicing some of those quotation pieces and using that textual evidence. But if you don't want to, that's totally okay. You can still answer these questions in the chart exactly how the example shows. So that's just a little extension for you guys. But the last piece is this exit ticket. Is showing empathy for someone a form of showing courage? In other words, is it brave? Is it courageous to show empathy? Why or why not? And you can use evidence from the text to support your thinking. If there's a situation from chapters 1 through 4, or specifically chapter 4 that kind of proves your point for what you're trying to say, you can include that there. And let us know if you have any questions, if you have any comments about this chapter. We'd love to hear them. You can keep sending us pictures of your work. We are happy to help you during office hours. And I guess we'll see you for chapter 5.